Welcome, welcome, welcome to CJ's Chat Box. I am so excited today because I have a wonderful guest, and his name is Jerry Breeden. And I have to tell you, because I already took one day, I followed a guy home one day because I saw on the back of his license plate it said, Peace Corps, and I thought, oh, I got to interview this guy. So I followed him home. Well, I didn't follow Jerry home, but I met him coming out of Aldi's one day.
That's right.
And he had on a vet hat, so I stopped him and I said, may I ask you a question? And his immediate response was, oh, I'm sorry, I'm married and I don't fool around. And I went, well, I wasn't about to ask that, but anyway, I said, are you a vet? And he said, yes. So we exchanged numbers and I got to know Jerry just a little bit. And there's a lot to know about Jerry. So we're going to try to tell you just a little bit about Jerry. I do know a little bit at the beginning, because that's where I usually start with my guests, that he was born in Long Island, New York.
Right.
And there was 4 siblings, correct?
Right. 2 older and 1 younger.
And then you had a kind of a famous dad.
Well, yes, my father worked on the Manhattan Project.
Oh, that surely had to be
The
exciting.
Manhattan Project, right. And then I actually, when I was a teenager later on, I actually worked in his factory.
Oh.
Yeah. I was 15, 16 years of age.
The one thing about you, which right now, as we go along, the people will find out very quickly that you're an entrepreneur. But the fact that that's something you were at a very young age, because you started, what, with your buddy?
Yeah, it started as a lot of kids in Long Island. In the wintertime, you shovel snow, you rake leaves, painted houses for people in the neighborhood, et cetera. And I like the fact of putting money in those little bank books, those little blue savings books. Remember those?
Yes.
Seeing the title go. To me, that was very, very interesting. So, yeah, my family, my older sister was a nurse. My brother, eventually, older brother, became president of Cuisinart, rival Crock-Pot. So, yeah, and my other younger brother, he was worked in the legal field.
Yeah.
So
sounds like you're a very talented family, but you're a people person for sure, and therefore you went to school and you got a degree in hotel management. Or
I did. I went to school after high school and part of NYU, Lewis Hotel Management. And it was a work-study program. Very, very interesting. You'd choose classes in the morning or the afternoon, and then they would assign you to go to, for instance, to the laundry room at the Plaza Hotel. Next day you were a busboy. Next day you were at the Fulton Fish Market downtown, making beds, working as a host, a doorman, all these different positions, the front desk, et cetera, moving yourself up.
Yeah.
So it was a great experience, almost like a mini MBA program.
Well, exactly, and hands-on is so much better.
Yeah.
The part I also liked was that you said that because everybody in the class was doing certain things, that when you got back, you shared.
We shared. We told our stories of what our experience for the day was. So even if you didn't do that job, you got the experience of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So therefore, you were enjoying yourself, did some working at a hotel, but then President Johnson got a hold of you?
I got a letter from the President Johnson, and he invited me with a bunch of other people to participate in the U.S. Army.
I see.
So I got drafted, and out of the 10 or 12 of us that grew up together in Long Island, I think about 8 of us went in within the next 6-month period.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a lot of it. This was in early 1966.
Okay, but you had special training for this?
Right, special training. I went from the following Fort Gordon, Fort Jackson, Fort Lee, Fort Dix, and Fort Benning. And they trained me a lot longer than most people got trained. I was very good because I was a Cub Scout, Boy Scout. I actually learned Morse code.
Oh, really?
And then in high school, I was very smart. I was only one of 2 guys that went to typing class. And why do guys go to typing class? Because all the other people in the class are?
Girls.
Very good, very good. So, when I got in, I knew Morse code. I was pretty much advanced in certain things. They give you a test in the beginning, the first time you're in. So immediately they try and get you to sign up again as an officer or cadet training or officer's training. I wasn't interested at that time, but they continue to push you the entire time. Yeah.
But you ended up being trained in Taekwondo.
Taekwondo came into Korea. I was into crypto school, which is above top secret. And that story goes, my mom called me one day when I was in one of the forts, and she said, "Are you in trouble?" And I said, "No, I don't think so." "Well, the neighbors were just questioned by the FBI about you." And I thought, oh my God, what happened now? But I came to find out that when you get that high of a clearance, I think the fact that my father worked at the Manhattan Project, et cetera, pushed it along.
Yeah.
So it was very unique, what they call military occupation in the schools. You end up with an MOS.
Okay.
And it was way out there for
Right.
what I was capable of doing.
But you told me that when I asked if you were in Vietnam, you said, no, I was really in Im Jim, and I had never heard of that. So
Korea.
Can you tell us just a little bit about where that's at and what you were doing there?
Right. So my original orders out of Fort Lewis, Washington, before you get shipped over, was to go to Vietnam. The next day before getting on that plane, my orders got changed to go to Korea. So they flew us to Korea, and I got to Korea, and they look up your military occupation, what you're entitled to or capable of doing, and then they put me up on the DMZ to train, which was called the Recon, Tiger Force Recon. They're South Korean Special Forces.
I see.
Now, these guys were totally insane, no question about it. Their training was some of the hardest training that you've ever come across, actually using live ammo. And it
Toward
was
each other.
Towards each other when you're in training. Right. So the whole training was about becoming patrols to go across the DMZ into North Korea. And being an Im Jim scout, there were only 2,000 of us that actually got to the point where we became Im Jim scouts. And Im Jim scout, only 2,000 Americans who trained along with the special forces for the Koreans. And we would go out on patrols. The only way that you got, which I have here, is a little medal, a little certificate that you wore, and you had to go on 20 patrols to achieve this.
I see.
Now that's going across the border 20 times.
Right.
Now what we did when we went across the border, I really not to get into, but it was pretty
horrific.
Pretty horrific.
Yeah.
So that.
But is that where you ended up getting into the Taekwondo?
Oh yeah, then I got into the
Korea?
Taekwondo. You had to take Taekwondo. That was part of your training as an Im Jim scout. Was Taekwondo. So I learned Taekwondo, made it to a high of a brown belt at that time, and then we eventually would select 6 to 8 South Korean Special Forces. They then sent us over on a plane to Vietnam. And I tell you one quick story is we left Korea one time. It was like 30 degrees below.
Oh my!
Got off the plane in Vietnam and outside Saigon, Tan Son Nhut Air Base, and it was 110. So then they would put us on helicopters. We would go to these coordinates, and I think this comes back to my high security. And then we would go to certain places. We'd accomplish what our orders were to do, and then we would come back.
Wow.
We did that several times.
Well, I was going to ask, because I know that some people that have taken karate, I don't know, I assume Taekwondo, same thing, is that they have to register their hands because they're killers.
I never had to do that.
Oh, well, good, I'm glad.
Never had to do that.
I'm glad.
Right.
So, okay, so you serve your time over there, decide not to re-sign up or re-up.
I did not re-up, but I did, when I got my honorable discharge, I signed myself out in Asia. And that gave me the opportunity to travel a lot. Different countries, Australia, Thailand, a lot of different places, Japan. So I went around before I came back to the States.
I know you've traveled beyond the average person, and I've never really found out, do you speak all the languages?
Oh, absolutely not. I spoke enough Korean because I had to train Koreans, so I spoke Korean. I took German in high school, 4 years of German. Only problem was I took German 1 for 4 years. I was in love with the German teacher, very attractive woman.
There's always a woman in your story.
Right.
The thing of it is that your ability to, still communicate with people because you're a people person. So it's like, you don't speak English? Well, that's your issue, because I only speak English, so we want to communicate. You figured out a way to do that, I'm assuming, since you traveled all over.
It's been 50, 60 years since I was semi-fluent in Korean. But when I do run into Korean population here, I have greetings and sayings that I'm familiar with, so that's not too bad. Right.
So as exciting as that was, doing all those special forces and doing the things you did there, the secrecy of it is also exciting and intriguing. But then when you came home, you decided with a buddy that you were going to go down to the end of the world.
Yes, I had planned a trip to go to the Olympics in Mexico City.
All right. That's
and I wanted to come up with an idea that was affordable to myself and my buddy to somehow be capable of doing that trip. So I went and approached different car manufacturers, and I got denied to drive a vehicle down. And then I came across Suzuki Corporation and their motorcycle. They had two brand new motorcycles. Persuaded them into giving us the two motorcycles. They planned this trip for us, and myself and my buddy took off. I'll break this out. This is...
was he as crazy as you are?
No, he was the sane one. I got to be honest about that.
Well,
this is leaving Long Island, New York in the early portion of the fall, of 1968.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And then this is what the motorcycles looked like as we departed.
Mm-hmm. And how they looked like finished.
Right. Well, not so good.
Quite.
Not so good. Right.
And you did make the Olympics.
We went to the Olympics.
But
we went to the Olympics. Saw the Olympics. Great history made. 1968 Mexico City Olympics. Phenomenal.
Well, and the thing you gave me, I don't know if you're writing a book or what you're writing, but you gave me the first 40 pages of the trip.
Right.
And I was worn out just reading it, let alone what you were doing. And the things you encountered on the way, whether it was the bikes or the people or food or, I mean, the weather, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what's interesting, like, and you are showing, you went down in the Andes, and I'm watching something on a documentary on the Andes, and one of the things they said was that when you get down near the Cape Horn, that the wind is so severe. And
Exactly.
I remembered in reading that you said that you literally got on your bikes and you couldn't go anywhere because the wind blew you off the road.
Right.
And I went, well, then I guess it's true what Jerry said. It's windy.
Yeah.
But you did make it down there.
Yeah, it was a great adventure, something that's never been duplicated that I know of by anybody. It was...
Nobody's that crazy, Jerry.
I guess not. Well, you're talking two young guys came back from
that fits.
the service, and we wanted to experience it. So the agenda was to first go to Mexico City. Mm-hmm. So we did go to the Olympics, and then we rode down to Acapulco on the two motorcycles, got down to Acapulco, stayed there for a while, and then we started heading south, which people would call the Pan American Highway, which is almost literally non-existent.
Right.
It's a dirt path road
wow.
at those time in 1968. Mm-hmm. And we rode along the coast, and we went into different countries like Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and then ended up some time in Costa Rica, which later on I'll revert back to the stories about Costa Rica.
Yeah.
A lot of going off the road stories.
Oh my.
A lot of.
You know, you ought to do a documentary just on that, just your trip.
Yeah.
Because it is so, again, and the people that were so willing to help you, and partly because they said, two crazy Americans doing this, on this road with these two bikes, that's what they thought. They helped you because they figured you lost it.
Well, actually, any tourist that anyone had ever met in any of those cities, they were the Americans, let's say, getting off of the Greyhound bus or the tour bus, and they were older people, and they were nice tourists, but that's the tourists that they knew. Yeah. Now, once the local people, whatever country I was in, realized that the only wealth that we possessed were these motorcycles.
Yes.
And then they started to feel like, oh, okay, they're part of us. They're not these high, influential
Right.
tourists.
Well, and you would get down to just $10 or something left because of having to do repairs and so on. Yeah. So it's a very exciting story. And like I say, I'm anxious to read the coming back trip. I mean, I got all the way to the Cape with you, but now I have to figure out how you get back.
Right.
But part of that, since you did this right after you'd been in this war, doing the secret and the dangerous things you were doing, this was a perfect time to do something that dangerous before you lost your nerve, is to take that trip
Well, I've
down
never
there.
lost my nerve.
Well, that's probably not, because I've seen all the other stuff that you've done.
I still do some crazy things.
All right.
Crazy
so
things.
anyway, so we're back to now. Are you back in the States? Can we go back to the States now? What you're started doing?
Okay. Well, I will tell you that after going from New York to Tierra del Fuego, which was Cape Horn.
Yes.
And I brought a map, but I won't break out the map at this point.
Yeah.
But anyone can take a look and see how a distance that is going through, all the way down through. We went from Panama. There's no through the isthmus. It's a swamp, and at that time, the only thing you could do was get on a barge or a boat, or go on an airplane and put the motorcycles in a cargo bay.
Oh,
Is what
and that's
we did.
when you ended up taking the plane.
Right. We took the plane and we landed in Colombia. Bogota, Colombia.
No drug cartels then?
They were probably out in the poppy fields growing someplace, because we slept in poppy fields with a pup tent, and we wake up in the morning and, oh, what's all this stuff?
Oh,
yeah.
my. Yeah.
So, yeah, we went to Ecuador, from Colombia to Ecuador. We were up in the Andes Mountains up there, freezing, absolutely freezing. But we tried to follow the roads. A lot of little interesting stories coming down from the Andes and crossing a metal bridge, and we came across, no joke, an African village. The houses looked just like they were from Africa, and the story went, I found out later on, that this was a slave ship, and the slaves had taken over the ship and somehow gone through from the Atlantic side, came through these rivers, and they established their own village.
Strong mutiny right there.
Yeah, something happened. I don't remember the whole story. But it was pretty shocking. You come out of the Andes, you're freezing, and now you're into an African village.
African village, yeah. Well, you probably thought you were hallucinating.
Yeah, you think, what is going on here? So that was interesting. And then, the story continues from there. We stayed quite a while in Lima, Peru.
Okay.
Met some friends, some people who accompanied us on some certain parts of the trip, which was very enjoyable. And people supported us.
That's what I find.
We met a gentleman
tend to be
who
likable, charming dudes, is what you were.
We met a gentleman who was the general manager of Pepsi Cola down there.
Really?
And he showcased us in different events. We were on television, although our Spanish was pathetic. We were on television, and people sort of helped us out wherever we could.
That's nice. That's really good. All right. Now, you're back in the States.
Back in the States.
Did you go right away to back into the hotel business then?
I have to show you this, whether they see this or not.
Oh, okay.
This is...
oh, you made the press.
We made the press down there, and you can see at the bottom it says Punta Arenas, Chile. And we got documents. We did a lot of different things to prove the fact that we actually made it.
Yes.
Because we had the idea to eventually write a book or do a video of this or whatever, which really I got too busy to do.
Well, that's true. I can see why, because you're too busy to do any of that. But you're still starting it, and I'm proud of you for that. Okay. So then, those are the press clippings. But then, yes, I want to know about the man on the moon. I find that so intriguing.
Okay. So now we're back in the United States, good old United States, recovering our wounds and healing nicely. And up comes the man on the moon shot, which everyone, of course, wanted to participate at sea, watch television. I think I had one of the largest coverages in the entire country at that period of time. So I said, well, now from New York, how do I get down to Cape Canaveral, Florida, and make some money on this deal?
Okay.
Right. So I came up with an idea, and this was my idea. I made a banner, Man on the Moon banner. I printed up 500 of these.
Yes.
Right. And myself and another friend, we rode down, actually in an old MG, right, with 500 banners in the trunk, and we set up right where the space shuttle was going to go off on one of the roads, and we didn't sell them all, but we did sell, probably like maybe 300 pieces. So actually sold one to...
Paid for your trip?
Right. To the press corps, bought them, a lot of different people. Walter Cronkite bought one. Actually, I didn't buy it. I gave it to him.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
forget that. You're Walter Cronkite. Here's mine.
You can have this.
Right. So
you got to see the blast off.
Oh, it was tremendous.
Yeah.
Tremendous, So
well, and you also said, and this is maybe getting a little bit ahead, but you at one time lived where you saw a lot of that, and you actually saw the Challenger.
Well, yeah, later on.
Yeah.
I did go, well, just to go back a little bit, I have to introduce the fact that I found this young lady when I came back, and this is Maggie, my wife.
Yes.
And this is when we first met.
And you've been married 52?
52 years, and next week it'll be 52 years.
And I remember that you told me that she lived in your neighborhood.
Right.
But you stalked her.
Yes.
For 2 months before she would go out with you.
Yes. It was hard to getting to know her. You know. She is of Chinese descent, but came to the United States at 8 years old. And as we all know, Chinese moms, what kind of a husband they look for the wife? Obviously another Chinese and a doctor.
And you were neither.
Well, I was neither of those, not even close.
So you had to really work hard.
We really worked hard. 2 years later, we did get married, right? So that was enjoyable.
Well, and here's the thing. Sometime I'm going to have to interview Maggie because of the fact that because you are the person you are, the entrepreneur you are, and the things that we're going to hear about that you've done, to have a partner that is excited and into it, she's an entrepreneur as well then. Because, that's what makes it so wonderful.
It's a great partnership. Believe me, I would not be where I'm at or where we're at today if it wasn't for the both of us, especially her. The joke is that my wife has an IQ of about 160. So when we combine the two IQs, hers and mine, it comes out to 100. So we're doing okay.
So you're bringing her down and she's raising you up, whatever.
Exactly.
It works. That's
so she's always been the finance person. I come up with
helps.
these crazy oddball ideas, and she'll kind of say, okay, well, I guess we can come up with the money somehow to do this project or that project.
And the part that's interesting about that, and it works in marriages and partnerships, that if you recognize that your gift is not financial, and therefore you don't try to make it that and let the person that's better gifted for that to do that, that's absolutely fabulous. So you didn't fight each other on that, saying, I can come up with the ideas, but you got to tell me if we can do them. Perfect.
When we got married, we had $200 in the bank. How's that?
That's the way to start.
Yeah, that's the way to start. But luckily, being a veteran of the VA benefits, and I still tell people today, very well worth to use your benefits. And I always tell people, young people, if you're leaving high school or whatever, you're a little undecided, you should really consider the military. I mean, they now pay very well. My first paycheck was $65 a month.
Wow.
Wow. And you had to buy a U.S. savings bond.
How you stretch that?
Well, you're in the military, so your food's very... But I think going into the military is a great equalizer. You know? And if you're not decided, go in. Your education, your housing, everything is paid for. I mean, it's incredible. And the benefits continue for your, as long as you're in the service.
If they were smart enough, they would take your advice, for sure. All right, what are we up next?
Okay, then I started to get serious about work. And joined...
Is this when you were in Chicago?
No, this is... Actually, I get from here. I started out in Long Island, New York, and went through training for Red Coach Grill, an older chain of restaurants, sort of a combination of Ruth Chris.
Oh, yeah.
And
best steaks ever.
Steaks, very good. A steakhouse, chop house, one of the first in that part of the restaurant business. So they shipped me out to Chicago. Maggie's still in Long Island, New York. We're in Chicago. And then finally we go back to Long Island. I got married in Long Island and then came back again to Chicago for my job. And I was running 2 Red Coach grills outside the Chicago area. One of them was in Downers Grove, Oakmont. The other one was at O'Hare International Airport, Chicago. And my opportunity of a lifetime, I always kind of consider, came by. And it was a gentleman who sat down one time in the restaurant. And he looked around and he said to the hostess, wow, this place has really changed. She said, oh, we have a whole new manager here, a young fellow. Oh, can you have him come over? I want to meet him. So I sat down, yes, how are you doing? Introduced myself. And he never really said his name. And he says, wow, you've really done a great job. New menus and new facility here, et cetera. And he said, would you ever consider leaving Red Coach Grill? And I said, well, an opportunity is an opportunity. So I said, well, I'm the vice president of a company that's located in downtown Chicago. And I said, oh, that's very interesting. And I said, what's the company? And he proceeded that he was Arnold Morton, vice president of Playboy International.
That had to just
Now
make your
I'm thinking
eyes
back,
open.
right, you know, and I'm thinking back, well, this could be interesting.
Really?
Very,
Yeah.
very interesting, right? So I went in for an interview and met Mr. Morton,
Right.
Arnold Morton at the time. And the story goes, if everybody's ever heard of Morton Steakhouse, that's what happened to him.
Morton.
And then I met a gentleman, another vice president called Danny Pacini.
Okay.
And Danny actually owned the Dante's Inferno.
Oh, my.
Yeah. And Hefner got the idea a little of the bunnies from Dante Pacini's Inferno. He had devil's tail on the back of his cocktail waitresses and the devil ears. So that kind of
Where he got the bunny.
where he sort of got the little idea of the bunny. That's what I believe, you know. But
Quickly
they never
before
met
we
him.
leave Morton, you did tell me that he wanted you to go to England to talk to his son and try to get him to talk back.
he actually, Arnold actually ran the casino in London. There were 30 clubs at that time all over the country, and London and Bahamas, et cetera. So Arnold and I became almost pretty good friends. I was like his mentor, right? So he was mentoring me. So we became very good friends. And then my first meeting, a board meeting, we're sitting down and there are almost 30 other managers at this board meeting. It was a once-a-year board meeting. And they were closing the old Chicago club on the corner of Walton and Michigan, and they were opening up the new club right here in the Playboy building, right?
Okay.
So they said, who would like to close the old club and open up the new club? No one raised their hand because all of the VIPs and all of the operations were upstairs. And they were all afraid, oh boy, they were going to get, every single day you have the vice president that's coming down. So anyway, Hef goes, well, who's this young guy? So Arnold says, oh, he's a bottom line guy. The good news is, and I never drank, never smoked, never coffee, tea, everything. Never. Oh, clean guy. Because all the other managers, to be honest with you, you call them drunks those days. You call them social drinkers.
Social drink, okay.
Well, the liquor is free.
Well, of course. So they're socially drinking all the time.
So they all went back to their clubs, San Francisco, LA, Miami, wherever it was. They all departed. And I was the one, my main objective was to open up the new Playboy Club.
Okay.
So we opened that up. It was a tremendous success. We had, here's another one of the Playboy Club. So if I can just show you here, do you want to be a bunny? That was one of the ads.
Yeah.
This is my executive business card, IMCO, which is International Management of Club Operations, and another business card from one of the clubs. So very, very interesting. We had a VIP room, a very high-end dining room.
Yeah.
We had the penthouse, which sat maybe, I'm trying to remember, 400 people.
Wow.
Yeah, almost like the Performing Arts Center, a little smaller, but very nice. And we had entertainers from around the world come. And I can't remember everyone, but I did give you, and I gave myself a list. And I'll just mention a few names of the people that performed at the Chicago Playboy Club.
Yes, that you got to meet, hopefully.
I got to meet, we had our green room.
Okay.
Right, and they would come in, and we had to provide, they gave us a list of what they wanted in the green room.
Okay.
And some of them were strictly alcohol, some of them were food, appetizers, poo-poo platters, etc.
Yeah.
But to be honest with you, most of them were pretty heavy drinkers.
I bet.
Liza Minnelli, Sonny and Cher, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Paul Anka, Diana Warwick, Wayne Newton when he had a voice, no voice anymore, Vic Damone, Diane Carroll, Bette Midler, a real character, Anthony Newley, Vicky Carr, Tony Bennett.
Wow.
Wow, what a performer. I mean, I think he's still doing it today.
Oh, he's still doing it.
Incredible. Natalie Cole, Donna Summer, Ann Margaret. And out of that, I mentioned to you before, the best performer, I haven't mentioned her name yet, and then a lot of people won't maybe recognize her except for our age, shall we say.
Yes.
Her father was on television, the Merry Mailman, on television for years, right? And his daughter was Joey Heatherton.
Oh, yes, I remember Joey.
And Joey Heatherton, to this day, I've seen a lot of performers, put on the best singing, dancing, musical show you've ever seen. And so she performed the circuit, because that was what it was. At that time, Vegas was big, but if you got on the Playboy circuit, that was saying something because it was around the world.
Oh, sure.
You know, and
Yeah.
they loved it. So all the managers and the agents would try and get their talent
Right.
onto the Playboy. So
That I do remember you talking
Yeah.
about Joey Heatherton.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the
yeah.
fact that she was full of, you said she was just full of energy.
Full of energy, nonstop show.
You were
shows.
only with Playboy, you said a couple years, because the
years.
hours were horrific.
Terrible. Because you'd get there, we'd open up to get the staff going at 10 in the morning, and then we'd go through lunch, which was very, very busy. And then typically we closed, except for, I think it was Fridays and Saturdays, we closed at 2. Friday and Saturdays, not in all the cities, but they had a liquor license that went till 4.
Oh, my goodness.
Now, luckily, Maggie and I lived for a period of time actually in the Palmolive, the Playboy building.
Oh, wow.
So we had our
That
own
makes
little
it
suite
convenient.
up
Yes.
there. Right. But occasionally I would take some of these dignitaries, entertainers, and we would go down the State Street to Hef's, when he lived there, the mansion.
Oh.
And they had the grotto there. They had a bowling alley. They had
Anything
parties.
and everything.
And they had everything and anything. It was a constant party all the time. He did always wear the smoking jacket. Very nice fellow. People have always asked me anytime that I would meet him or run into him or whatever, remember my name. Very nice. I really like the guy.
Right.
You know, it's a shame that he's been accused of things that we won't get into.
Right.
But now that he's passed away, he can't defend himself.
Can't defend himself.
Right,
So
right,
yeah,
right.
and easy target when you're not there to defend yourself.
Exactly.
So once you left Playboy, then did you stay in Chicago?
No, we actually we started to travel quite a bit. Maggie and I started to travel. We bought a motorhome,
Okay.
and we traveled throughout the United States. Came out to California, which was my second time going to California because of the motorcycles. We ended up in
Yes.
California and
Yeah.
rode them back all the way to New York at one point in time. Then we had, right after that, we had 2 children. My daughter, Lisa, who is now a nurse in Carlsbad.
Okay.
And doing very, very well. Works too much overtime, as most nurses are doing
Yes.
now. And my son, he lives in Hawaii with his family, and he is in real estate development, sells real estate and develops houses, something that I did later on we'll
Right.
get into.
Yeah.
Right. So they're both doing very, very well. And we'll get into a little bit, but Maggie's still extremely busy, nonstop.
Well, yes, because
Yep.
both of you don't let any grass grow under your feet. Let's
Right.
put it
So
that
we
way.
lived. We bought a house on in Fort Lauderdale. I got moved from Chicago. I got hired by the gentleman by the name of Seymour Ellis, and he owned Lake Club International in Miami, the Bridge Restaurant, quite a few restaurants. The Seahorse Restaurant on Los Olos Boulevard. Some people who have been to Miami might know some of these areas.
Yeah.
And I was sent down to oversee these restaurants and clubs.
Right.
From my experience.
Still
with
your
Playboy.
expertise.
Right.
is in
So we
your
moved.
hotel.
We moved to Fort Lauderdale. Enjoyed it tremendously. Bought a very nice house on the waterway on a canal. Had my boats, all that type of everything. Running back and forth to the Bahamas all the time, going fishing, going down to the Caribbean islands, etc. Very rarely did Maggie join me on these trips with the kids. It was too dangerous.
Right.
Too dangerous.
And living that close and in Florida, you encountered hurricanes, I'm sure.
Yes, yes. So we moved from there up to the Palm Beach area, and I bought a house. We bought a house right on the intercoastal,
Okay.
which is the main highway of water from the north all the way down to the
Okay.
south.
Okay.
And we had an inlet right directly across from our house. So I got a brilliant idea one day, and Maggie will still shoot me to this day about doing this. I went out and I bought a sailboat, an older sailboat, which is there. This picture is the sailboat. And along with my younger brother, Don, and my nephew, Scott, who was into all kinds of water sports, and he worked for Mel Fisher, the treasure hunter in Miami.
All right.
He was a diver for them, so experienced in the water. It was all 3 of us. So here we are. It was, I believe, September of 1979. And we had heard about a hurricane. So we checked with the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard said, oh, no fear. We're going out the Atlantic to the Bahamas, to Bimini. We're going to sail across. They said, no fear, the hurricane is going to hit Miami and it's going to go up the Gulf. Didn't happen. We were out in the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, and we got hit that first night with Hurricane David on this little boat, this little sailboat.
Oh, my goodness.
Hurricane David was one of the worst hurricanes ever to hit Florida. It was a Category 5.
Oh, my stars.
170 some miles an hour.
And you're in a sailboat.
Right. Now, do you ever see the movie Perfect Storm?
Yes.
Right. Perfect storm.
Oh.
Well, picture the perfect storm. This was the perfect storm in a 24. I think if we had had a larger vessel, we would have really been in trouble.
Really?
Yeah, because the waves are just like mountains.
Oh.
So we had the ability to ride the waves, and we rode the waves literally for 2 days. You know, the rain.
2 days?
A hurricane just doesn't stop like that. The waves on the ocean continue.
And you did you learn a lesson?
Yeah, sell a sailboat as soon as I got back.
Oh my, at least you didn't end up in the belly of a whale.
Right. Well, we ended up by seeing a huge cargo ship being pulled by a tug. And he spotted us, we sent up a flare, then he signaled back to us with a bullhorn and notified us that they had contacted the Coast Guard. Now, if anyone ever looks at a map and you see Palm Beach is down there, and then you see Bahamas is over to your east, only about 50, 60 miles, and then you see Bermuda, and you have Jacksonville, Bermuda. We ended up by the Coast Guard coming out of Jacksonville to get us. The current had taken us way beyond and northeast heading towards Bermuda. So they came and they saved our butts. They tied the boat up next to their Coast Guard cutter, and it took us, I don't know, almost 30 hours or something to get back to a port with the Coast Guard.
Did Maggie ever forgive you, or how long?
Well, when we did get back, the first thing she did was she called the insurance company.
We're selling the boat? Or,
No.
Was it
life insurance on me.
Oh, life insurance.
Life insurance on me. You know what I mean? Yeah, we were sunburned, we were destroyed, the boat was destroyed, etc. The ad appeared in the paper like I think the next day for that, but didn't stop me on boating. I always continued boating.
At least sailboat. Right. But now, is it while you're in Florida that you get, Maggie gets involved with the crafts and the jewelry?
Exactly. Maggie, as I said, very, very talented. She started with the craft business, needlepoint, macrame, rug hooking, etc. I can't remember all of the things, the knitting. So she was doing that very well, and we decided, well, let's open up a little store. So we found a location on A1A Highway in Boynton Beach, Florida, which is just the south portion of Palm Beach. And we opened up a little store, and she was doing fantastic. And I don't mind telling you that in the beginning, we'd spent all of our money selling the one house in Fort Lauderdale, and we had some. So we were looking for another house when she was doing this business, and we ended up with the house that I spoke of on the Intercoastal. The 2 children were still growing. I think at that time they were maybe 5 and 3 or something like that. She was doing so well that she started to go to become a gemologist because she had put in some silver chains in the showcases in the craft shop.
Right.
And people would come in. Well, they were buying more jewelry than we were selling. She was selling crafts. So she said, oh, this is pretty good. So she went to learn how to be a jeweler. Then she went to learn how to be a gemologist, etc. Very accomplished. Here we are with a business, 2 children, and myself. I was partially working in that business. I was still doing restaurant consulting back and forth in Florida, running different restaurants and hotels and stuff. So from that point, she got the brilliant idea, I guess maybe it was me, I'm not sure. We opened up a second shop in the heart of Palm Beach, and that went very, very well until our Italian restaurant next door pretty much almost burned down to the ground. It was connected to the same wall. So the insurance company came and they wrote us a major check for our business because everything got damaged, you can imagine, right? So with that money, we moved and I bought a piece of property up in Melbourne Beach. And this is what we bought in Melbourne Beach. This is the house. I designed and built this.
Wow.
Because I always had knowledge from my older brother and my father about construction and building. They were always adding on. They were always.
There's nothing that gets by you, is there, Jerry?
And
Nothing.
I kind of learned quickly, and I'm not afraid to, failure is not the word that you use too much.
No, no.
So anyway, we moved up to Melbourne Beach, in an oceanfront house. There is on the ocean, and I designed a house, 7,000 square feet, 3 levels, right smack on the ocean. So the kids lived on the ocean. They absolutely lived on the ocean. They loved that. We were only 300 yards from the intercoastal again, right? So it was like a barrier island. Very, very nice. Very lonely out there, but beautiful.
No.
Then the business started to take off for Maggie and the jewelry. We were doing up to 30 trade shows a year.
Oh my.
All over the country. Not just Maggie and I, but we had employees. My brother helped us. We had brought in a couple other people. And we would take our jewelry that she had designed. We were now traveling all over the world buying jewelry. And we would take it to trade shows and then start to sell our wares. And the business became almost overwhelming for us.
Well, it's like you guys, both of you have the Midas touch.
Yeah.
Everything you touch turns to gold.
Well, I wish I could say everything.
Well,
There are-
other
there
than
are-
the sailboat,
there are some
I won't
failures.
forget the sailboat, okay?